Well, good afternoon. I will just start by saying that I am really grateful that the Missouri General Assembly was able to accomplish what the governor brought us back here to do. I'm really especially grateful that the focus this special session was on relief money for St. Louis, as we heard from some incredibly powerful testimony, not only in hearings this week, but from our own members today on the floor who've been experiencing this day in and day out since the tornado hit St. Louis. That is the number one priority of the state. It was made very clear this week here in the House, and I'm super grateful we were able to get that done. That said, I'm also really grateful personally. I don't speak on behalf of my entire caucus here, but I'm really glad that we were able to put together a package that incentivizes the Chiefs and the Royals to stay in our state, and I'm happy to take questions.
The vote today was 13 votes fewer in favor of the stadium bill than it was received as an amendment in May. How important was the extra storm relief money that the governor added and the tax credits for deductibles to getting that bill passed?
It was immensely important. And I think that the reason for that is, when you look at the big picture of this special session, everything that was on the table, there were just certain points of negotiation that needed to be addressed. And one of those was, if we want to get this stadium done, which is an economic development opportunity for the state and a priority of our governor, it was necessary to make sure that he could shore up those votes by making folks happy in other ways, right? That includes adding those additional dollars for St. Louis, as well as bringing back some of those non-GR appropriations from the bill that died at the end of the year.
The stadium legislation requires local buy-in. Obviously, last year, a vote on that failed in Jackson County. Are you anticipating a better vote this time around? What are you kind of thinking for that local contribution?
Well, the bill that we passed here today is location agnostic. So it doesn't necessarily mean that the Royals and the Chiefs are going to be in Jackson. They're potentially looking at Clay, at least the Royals are. And so what I anticipate is, what I hope to see happen is a much better run campaign for whatever local initiative takes place. It will likely be some sort of sales tax, and if that happens, I really hope that the folks behind that campaign clearly communicate to the public what their intention is and what they want to accomplish and how it's going to benefit the folks in the area. I think that was missed in the last campaign, and I think that was a big reason it failed.
During the committee hearings this week, the Chiefs were pretty specific about what they would do if they would stay in Missouri, where the Royals kind of left it to, we just have multiple locations in Missouri. As someone from Platte, I'm kind of curious, who do you think has a better chance of lowering them? Would a sales tax vote work better in Clay than Jackson?
Honestly, I really don't know at this point. I know there's been some polling in Clay. I haven't seen the results, but what I will say is that folks in Kansas City, as you well know, are pretty in love with our sports teams, and I think the idea of putting together a package that makes fiscal sense to the voters, as well as makes economic sense to the region, I think it will be well received if it can be framed correctly.
Missouri has now made its financial commitment. It will not be possible for the local governments to make as firm a financial commitment by the end of the month. Is it time for the Royals and the Chiefs to make their decision and make their commitment to Missouri this month?
I would call on them to do so, yes. And the reason for that is, we bent over backwards here in the Missouri legislature to deliver them something by the end of their imposed deadline of June 30th. And I would very much like for them to hold true to that deadline and let us know where they're going before that.
So the Chiefs' plan is to likely do major renovations to Arrowhead in the first place, whereas the Royals want a brand new stadium. Do you think there is a chance that one of the teams might stay where the Chiefs might stay and the Royals might go because they're looking for a new stadium no matter where they are, versus the Chiefs that are looking to stay put?
Yes, absolutely. I think that is a possibility, but I hope it's not the reality.
The property tax. Actually, I wonder if we could hear from Representative Steinhoff about the property taxes. I know that you said there would be some effects on schools. Do you reiterate that? And then I wonder, do you think that it would hold up in court?
Well, I'm no attorney, so I'm not sure about the holding up in court, but I've heard from a lot of people that it would not, just because of the fact that it's a framework that is different across the state and that the Constitution requires that framework of taxing, that local taxing, be the same. So for that, I don't know for sure. honestly, in my vote today, I'm banking on the fact that it will not hold up in court. That's what I'm hopeful, because some of the remarks on the floor that I made are the fact that we might have looked at that bill. I know when I looked at the bill, I looked for my county. I saw they were opted out, so I felt safe. I felt like my school district was safe. My fire department, my police, my actual municipalities were safe. However, when I started to think about it further, particularly when it comes to schools, when we are underfunding one community, what happens in Missouri is we use other taxpayers' money in order to hold that up. And I gave several examples to how our foundation formula may seem somewhat fair. At least it's designed to be equitable. I know it does have some problems, but we have a lot of Band-Aids that go with school funding on top of that. Small schools grant, teacher baseline salary grant, the hold harmless. And so when we've got communities that are underfunding their local effort towards schools, what is happening is the state of Missouri is coming in and helping a little bit. And so that's hurting our people that are actually taxing their schools locally very well. They're ending up paying more so that we can help the school districts that are not putting forth that local tax effort.
How important do you think the severability clause was in the passage of this, knowing that there might be that portion gets sued, then it would not be, wouldn't kill the whole bill?
I mean, I think it's very important. I don't know how much more we can speak to that, but for people that don't understand that severability, it was just that if there is a constitutional challenge, which we are likely to see on that property tax portion, it would kill the whole bill. Like the whole bill would be declared unconstitutional unless we had that severability clause in there. I said that right? Sure did. Maybe not the word, but the idea.
In that same vein, Speaker Patterson says he is going to start a task force to look at rising property taxes. What does the party want to do with that, and what would be your participation?
I think it is a noble endeavor to kind of identify what's going on across the state in different communities and how rising property taxes are affecting different portions of the state. I think that is an excellent first step before we go and do something drastic, like trying to defund our public schools and our libraries and our first responders through a tax cut that was passed at 3 a.m. I think that is it. I think that portion of this bill was incredibly ill-conceived, and I really do believe that the more data we have, the better policy we can create from that.
I have a question for Representative Fogle. So for the appropriations bill, obviously it did not include all the projects for House Bill 19 that was not passed. Speaker Patterson maybe mentioned the interest in either a supplemental, trying to get that done. Like, do you anticipate some of those projects maybe getting funded earlier than normal, waiting for regular budget process?
I would hope so, and of course House Democrats would be in support of funding all of the components of House Bill 19. We've been supportive of that every step of the way. I think our frustration has not been kept secret. That is the first time I've heard that there's an interest from the majority to fund that in a supplemental. What I will say is it is very frustrating to play a small role in crafting a large budget that the majority chooses to arbitrarily cut funds and say they're reducing the size of the budget with every intention of just coming back and passing it in the supplemental, so they can campaign on the fact that they passed a smaller budget. I think we will be excited and ecstatic to fund those vetted projects in House Bill 19 if we're given the opportunity to do so. But again, we should have done that when we had the opportunity the first time.
Are you concerned that you're going to have to come back before veto session after Congress passes a federal budget?
Yes. There's a lot of uncertainty at the federal level that would leave drastic impacts on our communities back home, and the state will have to figure out if it is our role to step in and fund some of those projects. And I know myself and my colleagues would be interested in those conversations. I don't know how the majority feels and how quickly or how closely they will align themselves with President Trump.
For a representative from St. Louis, maybe you, ma'am, what does the $100 million mean in additional funding for St. Louis as far as storm recovery?
It means a lot. It really does. The 100, when it went from 25 to 100, we do need a little more, but people can start, have a brand new start in the, on recovery. And that's the majority what's going on. We do need that.
If I could add real quick, I just want to say, yesterday during the hearing, Mayor Spencer and her team did a fantastic job of answering the budget team's questions and laying out exactly how they intend on using these funds, not only in a fiscally responsible manner, but in a manner that triages the needs of their community. I've been incredibly proud of the work that I've seen between the legislature and the mayor's office and the governor's office. I think it's been very promising, and I think that building a good relationship between Jefferson City and St. Louis is good for our state, and I look forward to continuing that.
Kind of keying off of that, she talked about resetting the relationship, and even hearing some of the conversation today on the floor about Representative Christ and you know, certainly his role in 795, but then being a 795 or 495, sorry, but being a help in the aftermath. Talk a little bit about why that relationship needs to be reset.
You know, I'm probably the wrong person to talk about, you know, specifically the relationship between the historic relationship between the legislature and St. Louis. I'd be happy to step aside and let a St. Louis rep take that. But I will first just say that when we see something like the tornado that hit, you know, we heard several people on the floor today talk about if this were to happen in any community across the state, we would all show up and show out for one another. One thing that I think is often lost in this building is that, yes, we come here to represent not only our constituents, but our parties, oftentimes, right? Those of us who get elected, we have an R next to our name or a D next to our name. And one thing that gets lost, especially, no offense, but in the media, is just that it's not all infighting. It's not all us yelling at each other. We contain multitudes, legislators contain multitudes, and we have the capacity to disagree without being disagreeable. And I think that that's what we showed today. We showed not only with Representative Christ carrying this bill and what he's done in community, but what we've heard from our St. Louis reps, from our Democrats who said, we showed up and they showed up and we were so grateful for it. And if this happened in your county, we'd be showing up there too. That's what this body should be doing. And I'm very grateful that it's something that we're doing to really model what that looks like for the rest of the state. Because bipartisanship is not dead in Missouri, even with a supermajority in place. And I think Missourians need to hear that. And they deserve to know that when push comes to shove, we're going to show up for each other and for our communities.
This bill wouldn't have passed without the 32 Democratic votes that it got. Can that be leveraged into a better relationship or better deal from the majority Republicans in the future?
I think so, absolutely. And what I will also say is I think that the relationship with the with Republican leadership has, in spite of all the frustrations at the end of session, has still been fairly good this year compared to previous years. Like I said, I think that the legislature worked well together over the special session. I think that we worked well with the governor's office and we worked well with the city of St. Louis. And I think that those relationships staying strong, those you know, showing that we can show up for one another when our priorities may look a little bit different is really important. And yeah, that goes a long way to continuing to build that strong relationship. Anything else? All right. Thanks, y'all.
You all be safe.